Picture yourself in a house where kids' voices ring down each corridor. Picture birthdays almost monthly, baby showers crowding the calendar, and miniature hands grabbing sleeves across family dinners. Picture living in a world where motherhood is not only celebrated, it is the very basis of identity, respect, and belonging. Then picture yourself as the sole person in that home who cannot join in on that joy. This is the tragic truth that characterized the life of Meri Brown, the first wife of Kody Brown, the main character of TLC's long-running reality show Sister Wives. From the start, the show introduced audiences to an unusual American family living a life that many considered bizarre, provocative, scandalous polygamy. 4 wives, 1 man, and 18 children, the Browns became the face of plural marriage on primetime television. And while the world outside was weighing morality and legality, within the home a more subtle, more heartbreaking struggle was being waged. That struggle belonged to Meri. When Meri wedded Kody in 1990, she was young, wide-eyed, and optimistic. She was the first wife, and thus had the privilege of being the one to create the foundation of the Brown clan. She saw in her mind's eye a future filled with children, laughter, and the proud ache of being the first to give birth to new life in the family. And initially it appeared that dream was materializing. In 1995, Meri bore her lone child, Leon Brown. It was not just a celebratory moment for Meri and Kody, but for the whole plural family. For Meri, it was the beginning of something, the beginning of a big, lovely family of her own in the bigger Brown family. But life had other plans. After Leon, Meri never conceived again. What she thought was only the beginning turned out to be the end. Infertility is often described as an invisible wound. There are no casts, no scars, no bandages. But the pain is constant, and in Meri's case it was amplified by the environment she lived in. Because in a polygamous marriage, particularly in the Brown home, children weren't merely welcomed but anticipated. Her sister wives built their families with ease. Janelle Brown had 6 children, filling her home with constant activity and noise. Christine Brown also had 6 children, crafting her role as a mother around being the fun full-time mom. Later, Robyn Brown would be added to the family, with 3 children from a prior marriage and 2 more born to her and Kody. Around Meri, everywhere there were children, babies crying at night, toddlers learning to walk, teenagers bickering over car keys. But after Leon to Meri, there was just silence. The Browns exposed on the show that Meri had tried the IVF treatments, so desperately hoping to get pregnant again. IVF, or in vitro fertilization, is a painful process. It's hormone injections, medical interventions, costly expenses, and the harsh roller coaster of hope and despair. Each try held a glimmer of hope, perhaps this time it will succeed. But with each failure, Meri was devastated. For many women, infertility is isolating enough. For Meri, it was 1,000 times worse. Not only could she not add to her family, but she had to sit back and watch her sister wives do it again and again, usually with Kody cheering them on. Can you picture yourself sitting in a living room where pregnancy announcements are the norm, where baby showers are family gatherings, where every wife appears to bear the gift you've always dreamed of, and you're sitting there with nothing but empty arms? In front of the camera, Meri attempted to be supportive. She went to baby showers, she congratulated her sister wives, and she celebrated each new baby as one of the family. But behind the scenes, she confessed to intense pain, jealousy, and guilt. She ached for another child of her own. She culled jealousy, for her sister wives appeared to have what she could not. Guilt, for she knew her feelings sometimes grew bitter, and she did not want to spoil the happiness of others. This unseen battle put up an emotional barrier between Meri and the rest of the family. Although Janelle, Christine, and Robyn were all united in pregnancies and childbirth experiences, Meri was not. It wasn't that they shut her out. It was that she felt shut out by biology, by circumstance, by fate. And for Kody, the gap increased too. A man who frequently expressed a desire for a big family, Kody subtly turned his focus to his other wives, the ones who had more to offer in terms of children. To comprehend why Meri's struggle was so catastrophic, you must grasp the culture of polygamy. In the Brown family's church background, the Apostolic United Brethren, children are not blessings, they're spiritual callings. Wives are sometimes esteemed for their fertility. Large families are evidence of God's blessing. So for Meri, not being able to have any more children was not only a personal disappointment, it was in her mind, a spiritual failure. On Sister Wives, Meri confessed to feelings of inadequacy, that she wasn't enough for Kody, that she couldn't fulfill the role expected of her. This cultural weight made her infertility not just a medical issue, but an identity crisis. By the mid-seasons of Sister Wives, it became clear that Meri's infertility had reshaped her role in the family. Her romance with Kody chilled. Kody openly admitted in subsequent seasons that his romantic connection with Meri had dissipated, that he didn't regard her as a spouse to the same extent as his other wives. Meri, devastated, retreated further. She bonded even more with Leon, her sole child, and channeled her energy into work, business, and ultimately friendships outside the family. Fans would usually comment that Meri looked isolated, pushed to the sidelines, and shattered, far removed from the bright-eyed young woman who used to envision a big family. Her hurt over being infertile didn't end with the IVF failure. It seeped into all aspects of her marriage, her religion, and her sense of self as a wife and mom. The reason Meri's story struck such a chord with viewers is because infertility is something many women face in silence. Statistics show that 1 in 8 women struggle with infertility. But in Meri's case, that struggle was not private. It was televised. Millions of viewers watched her cry on screen, watched her break down in confessionals, watched her relationship with Kody deteriorate as the years passed. Her hurt was raw, unfettered, and understandable. For women who'd followed the same journey, Meri was a reflection of their own unvoiced sorrow. To others, she was a figure of strength, living in a family where everything appeared to conspire against her. Over time, Meri came to terms with the fact that she would never give birth again. But acceptance was not peace. It was reorienting her life into something different. She stood by Leon through their own process of self and identity discovery. She invested in her bed and breakfast business, pursuing independence independent of Kody. She established friendships and networks independent of the plural marriage. Infertility may have defined her, but it did not determine her. And yet, when viewers look back at Meri's time on Sister Wives, her fertility struggle remains one of the defining health issues of the entire show. The silent, invisible battle that shaped her role in the family and ultimately fractured her marriage with Kody. So, when you hear the name Sister Wives, you might imagine legal wars, property conflicts, or dramatic splits. But underlying it all is a softer, more profound narrative. A woman huddled in a house full of children, yearning for one more of her own, and waging a silent war against her own body. Meri Brown's infertility isn't just a plot. It's the pulsating heart of why her marriage fell apart, why her role in the family changed, and why people will always remember her heartbreak. Because sometimes, the most deafening breakups are the ones we can't hear. When Meri Barber first encountered Kody Brown in the late 1980s, she was a young woman with starry-eyed dreams. She had grown up in a fundamentalist Mormon community and was surrounded by the dogma of plural marriage, in which wives were not merely companions. They were pillars supporting an even bigger vision, creating big celestial families that transcended this world. To Meri, children were more than blessing. They were evidence of God's plan. And therefore, when she fell for Kody, a bright, go-getting young man of the same faith, it seemed like fate. They were wed in 1990, the very first of the multiple marriages that would come to form the large, complicated family known worldwide as Sister Wives. As Kody's first wife, Meri was special. She wasn't merely Kody's companion, she was the groundwork. She envisioned a house full of kids, giggles, and milestones. Every birthday, every Christmas morning, every school performance, she imagined herself surrounded by tiny hands and faces calling her mom. She wanted to be the matriarch who began a legacy. And in 1995, that vision appeared to come into being. When Meri gave birth to her sole child, Leon Brown, it was one of the best days of her life. The delivery was hard, since all first pregnancies tend to be so. But when she finally had Leon in her arms, she felt as if she was entering the life she had dreamed of. Kody was thrilled as well. He held the baby close, hailing Leon as a miracle. For a newlywed couple embarking on life, this was the best possible start. A healthy baby, an optimistic marriage, and a family waiting to grow. For Meri, the experience of being a mother was overwhelming in the best way. The tiny cries in the night, the smell of baby lotion, the tender moments of rocking Leon to sleep. These were the memories she had prayed for, and she thought there would be more. But after Leon, the years slipped by, and Mary's arms remained empty. At first, Meri dismissed it. Sometimes it takes a while, she reassured herself. She and Kody didn't have any doubt that there would be another pregnancy. They were young, healthy, and they were all around other women in their community who were having babies year after year. Years went by, then months. Meri became aware of the quiet at home. In contrast to the hustle and bustle at her friends' places, she'd see other women declare pregnancy, schedule baby showers, and get nurseries ready as she silently wondered, why not me? The early years following Leon were a bittersweet combination of heartbreak and hope. Each missed period was a prayer answered in disappointment. Each visit to the doctor was another reminder of the battle she never thought she'd have to fight. By the late 1990s, physicians were proposing something novel: in vitro fertilization. It was an opportunity, but a small one, for Meri to have another child. For the uninformed, IVF is the procedure of extracting eggs, having them fertilized in a laboratory, and then inserted into the uterus. It's costly, grueling, and stressful. But for couples willing to do anything to have children, it provides hope. Meri and Kody did. The treatments were brutal: hormone shots, medical tests, interminable waiting. Every cycle was a wave of guarded hope, followed by suffocating despair when the test results were negative. For Meri, the physical anguish was nothing in comparison to the emotional depletion. With every disappointed attempt, she felt increasingly shattered, more incomplete, more as if she was failing as a wife. Being the initial wife in a plural marriage was both a privilege and a burden. On the one hand, she was admired as being the one who began it all. On the other, she was held responsible to set the standard, to be fruitful, to establish the foundation of the family. But Meri was the one wife who couldn't. She attempted to be brave. She stood by Janelle and Christine when they came into the family, smiling at their pregnancies and cooing at their baby. But beneath, she confessed to jealousy and desperation. Can you picture yourself sitting in a living room filled with children who do not belong to you, seeing your husband smothering newborns that are not yours, yet your own belly is quiet? For Meri, this was not only heartbreaking, it was humiliating. Kody, at first, tried to be supportive, but as the years went on, his attention naturally shifted to the wives who were giving him more children. In a family where children equaled growth, Meri became the one wife who could not contribute. This dynamic chipped away at their bond. They argued, they grew distant, and Meri's sense of isolation deepened. Later in Sister Wives, she would confess that her infertility made her feel like she was not enough. Not enough for Kody, not enough for the family, not enough for herself. Each failed round of IVF was not only a disappointment on the medical front, it was also a reminder that she could never be in the Brown home, a mother of many. By the time Robyn joined the family in 2010, Meri's hopes had nearly vanished. Watching Robyn become pregnant with Solomon and later Ariella was another painful reminder of her own reality. Though Robyn even offered to be a surrogate for Meri, the wounds were too deep. Meri couldn't bring herself to go through it again. The waiting, the uncertainty, the pain. Her vision of a large family expanded into nothing. She had only Leon, and although she adored Leon with all her heart, she mourned the dozens of birthdays, milestones, and hugs that would never materialize. Meri married Kody in 1990, believing that she was embarking on a lovely life as a wife and mother. She believed Leon's arrival in 1995 was merely the beginning chapter of many, but instead it became her only chapter in motherhood. Her story is one of hope that turned into heartbreak, of dreams that turned into silence. And in a plural marriage where motherhood is everything, Meri's struggle with infertility was not just a personal tragedy. It was the beginning of cracks in her marriage, the first step toward the loneliness that would later consume her life. Meri's hopeful start did not end with happiness, but with yearning. This is where Meri's journey really starts, with visions of motherhood, the happiness of Leon's birth, and the devastating reality of infertility that followed. Her hopeful start was also the start of her biggest test. And as we go through this tale, we will observe how that quiet battle fashioned not just her marriage, but the entire Sister Wives family dynamic. In a polygamous family, kids aren't merely a part of life, they are life. They occupy the hallways, the kitchens, the minivans. They are the cause of big dinners, messy houses, and perpetual noise. For the Brown family, that reality became increasingly clear over the years. For Meri Brown, though, the same reality was the most glaring reminder of what she did not have. When her second wife, Janelle Brown, joined the marriage, it was not long before her family expanded. One after another, her children came along, a total of 6. With each childbirth, Janelle's home became full of energy. Midnight wails, little feet racing in the house, birthday parties, school trips. Next was Christine Brown, the third wife, who introduced her own happiness and disorder to the family. Christine also had 6 children. Christine was affectionately known as a mother figure. Christine fully accepted the role. Her home was a center of playfulness and warmth. She was the mom who cooked pancakes in the morning, made lunches, and did the carpool. Later on, in 2010, Robyn Brown came into the family. She had 3 children from a previous marriage, and 2 more with Kody, later on. With her, the family swelled to 18 children altogether. The Browns were no longer a family. They were a small village, in a house where baby clothes hung to dry, where school projects cluttered the kitchen, where laughter echoed through shared living rooms. Mary's world was starkly different. She had only one child, Leon, while the other wives had bustling households, filled with multiple children competing for attention. Mary's space was quieter. Leon grew older, moving through childhood into teenage years, while Meri never experienced the new baby phase again. No sleepless nights, no bottles, no fresh diapers, no little siblings for Leon to play with. To the outside world, it may have appeared a blessing. Less noise, less chaos. But for Meri, it was a wound, an unspoken, constant reminder that she was different from the others. What made it more painful for Meri was how apparent the differences were. Did baby showers were the norm at the Brown household? There was another party, another blue or pink room decorated, another baby bottle or rattle-adorned cake every few years. Meri went to all of them. She clapped, smiled, hugged, and congratulated on the surface. But inside, she confessed to feeling jealous, pain, and broken-hearted. During her sister wives' interviews, Meri admitted that she would leave these gatherings in tears. She wished so much to be a part of the happiness, but at the root of it all, it hurt her to see the life she imagined living being lived by other people. This disparity formed what Meri frequently referred to as an invisible wall between her and the other members of the family. It wasn't that her other sister wives pushed her away. They made efforts to be supportive, and they never consciously pushed her away. But the conditions themselves formed a barrier. When Christine and Janelle exchanged stories of pregnancy or tips on toddlers, Meri had less to say. When the wives connected over Bedlam school mornings with multiple children, Meri was unable to relate. She wasn't alienated, she was isolated by biology, and that isolation gradually eroded her confidence, her relationships, and sense of belonging. Kody Brown always insisted he wanted a large family. For him, children were the center of his plural marriage, and in many respects, his wife's fertility glued them to. But with Meri, that glue lost strength over time. Initially, Kody sympathized. He was with her for fertility, supported her optimism, and was disappointed when IVF failed. But the years went by, and naturally his attention gravitated to the wives who could continue to enlarge the family. When Janelle or Christine had announced their pregnancy, Kody was elated. When Robyn gave birth to her children, he was heavily involved. He spent time with her kids, contributed to milestones, and basked in the glory of fatherhood. For Meri, though, there was nothing new to rejoice. No pregnancies anymore. No newborns anymore. No milestones shared as a couple. This absence of common experiences served to distance. Kody desired additional children. Meri desired additional children. But the biology had decided for them. And it was a choice that would come back to haunt their union for years to come. Sister Wives viewers noticed this tension play out in subtle but agonizing ways. At group gatherings, Meri tended to sit silently, while the other wives traded child stories. At family dinners, she was less lively, less present. On the occasions when children were discussed, her face would fall, her eyes drop. It was clear that Meri was hurting, and while TLC highlighted the family's struggles with property, religion, and trust, for Meri the root of her pain was often this silent battle, living in a family where children defined everything, while her arms remained empty. Another layer of complexity came with Leon, Meri's only child. As Leon grew up, they occasionally felt the burden of being the only one amid dozens of siblings, cousins, and step-siblings. Leon had no younger brother or sister to cohabitate with in their immediate family. Meri was incredibly protective of Leon, pouring all of her energy and love into them. But that dynamic also placed pressure on Leon, who often carried the weight of being Meri's sole source of motherhood. For Meri, Leon was everything, but for Kody, Leon was only one of 18. This imbalance deepened Meri's feelings of being left out. By the mid-2000s, Meri was trapped in a storm of emotions: jealousy over her sister wives being pregnant, guilt over feeling jealous, realizing it wasn't their fault, resentment against Kody for spending more time with other wives and children, loneliness, as her position in the family shrank smaller and smaller. This storm wasn't always on view to the public eye. On screen, Meri frequently tried to fake a smile, but behind closed doors, the cracks came out. Tears, admissions, and flashes of vulnerability revealed the truth. Infertility had alienated her in the one place where children mattered most. Plural marriage is usually depicted as equal, but realities are stark. Comparisons are ongoing. Wives compare themselves to each other, and husbands, sometimes unwittingly, compare them as well. Meri felt the sting of those comparisons harshly. Janelle was the practical wife, 6 kids with organization. Christine was the nurturing wife, the full-time mother of 6. Robyn was the young new wife, adding kids and bringing more to the family. She had one child. Regardless of how she worked to participate differently, caring for the children, earning a living outside the home, or putting money into the family's coffers, having more children blocked out all the rest. She wasn't less than in the end, but to herself and even perhaps Kody, she was. Looking back, it's clear that Meri's infertility was one of the earliest cracks in her marriage to Kody. While other issues would arise later, jealousy, trust, even the infamous catfishing scandal, the seed of distance was planted here. Meri wanted more children, Kody wanted more children, but biology had decided otherwise, and that decision left them both unfulfilled. For Meri, it was a lifetime of seeing what she wanted happen all around her, but never in her own home. For Kody, it was putting his energy into the wives who could help him keep expanding the big family he envisioned. And for the Brown family overall, it meant that Meri, the original wife and the family's foundation for so many years, gradually became the outsider. Meri's experience of living among children, but without more of her own, is one of the most heartbreaking chapters in Sister Wives. It wasn't just infertility. It was infertility magnified by the environment she lived in, an environment where children were the currency of value, status, and belonging. Her loneliness wasn't caused by cruelty from her sister wives or rejection from her family. It was caused by circumstance. And yet, those circumstances created a wall so strong that even love couldn't break it down. This was the moment where Meri's story shifted from hope to heartbreak, where her role in the family began to fade, and where her marriage with Kody started down the path toward irreparable cracks. Because sometimes the widest space isn't built by fights or by betrayals. Sometimes it's built by silence, the quiet of empty arms within a home full of children. For Meri Brown, infertility wasn't simply a diagnosis. It was a war. A war fought quietly upon her own body, fought in doctors' offices, battled within her heart, and brought into her marriage. And her weapon of choice? IVF. In the early 2000s and late 1990s, in vitro fertilization was typically portrayed as a miracle for infertile women. Physicians framed it as hope, a method of taking science and curving it toward the desire for motherhood. Meri held on to that hope. Every cycle started with endless hormone shots, injections that would make her body do what it would apparently not do naturally. There were the blood tests, ultrasounds, and the constant surveillance that accompanied every attempt. The process wasn't only clinical, it was devouring. It dictated her routine, her mood, her marriage. And yet, each time through, she had a glimmer of hope. Perhaps this time, perhaps this will be the one. And then the results came in, negative. Again and again. Each failed cycle was more than a laboratory test. It was a crushing blow. For Meri, it wasn't about not having a baby. It was about the message she recited to herself in the ensuing silence. You are not enough. You can't provide Kody with what he desires. You are not a good wife. IVF doesn't merely test the body, it tests the soul. The waiting, the doubt, the hope that is building and then is crushed. It's a cycle of emotional whiplash. Meri went through it again and again. and each time became a little quieter, a little sadder, a little more reserved. Meri subsequently confessed to feelings that ripped her in two. Jealousy when the sister wives revealed new pregnancies, guilt over being jealous, realizing she should be happy for them, shame at not being able to live up to the family expectations, fear that Kody would move farther away from her. In the Brown home where children were blessings from God, Meri felt cursed, and that created layers of guilt she could never shake. She would smile during baby showers, hug her sister wives, and congratulate them on camera. But off camera, she said she often cried alone. For Kody Brown, the fertility problem was complicated. Initially, he supported Meri, urging her treatments, sharing disappointed reactions when tests returned negative. But as time went by, viewers saw something change. Kody's language turned more biting, his tone turned icy. At one point, he even dared to tell Meri she should move on from dreams of having additional children, something that cut deep into her. To him, maybe it was convenient. He already had kids with his other wives. His vision of a big family was still being met, just not with Meri. But to her, that promise ratified what she felt was the worst about her, that she was only valuable to him because she could bear children. And if she could not, then what did he want with her? Christine, Janelle, and Robyn attempted to empathize. They knew Meri was suffering. They recognized her pain. But there's only so much empathy can stretch. The reality was they couldn't relate. They possessed what she desired most. When they rocked their own babies to sleep at night, when they marveled at first steps and first words, when they went to parent-teacher conferences and dance recitals, they lived the life Meri envied, and no amount of sympathy could gap that void. This generated an emotional tempest within Meri that only intensified over time. Anger at her own body for failing her, resentment toward Kody for appearing aloof, jealousy toward her sister wives for experiencing her fantasy, solitude as she isolated herself from the family to insulate herself. She was trapped in a state of self-guilt, where each baby born in the family was yet another reminder of what she had lost. This storm was not always outwardly apparent. On camera, Meri smiled and continued on. But in her own confessionals, the cracks emerged. Tears, frustration, admissions of feeling shattered. Sister Wives viewers witnessed a woman struggling against an unseen storm. They felt for her, writing letters and messages of encouragement. Many fans who had experienced infertility themselves bonded strongly with Meri, but they also saw the strain on her marriage. They saw how Kody seemed more engaged with his other wives. They saw Meri's growing distance, and slowly they began to piece together what the family itself might not have wanted to admit. Infertility wasn't just a medical issue. It was a wedge, a crack in the foundation. As the years passed, Meri drew in. She was more reserved at family gatherings, less lively at social events. She concentrated on Leon, work, and her own hobbies outside of the family. But with that withdrawal came vulnerability. When you're unseen in your own marriage, unvalued in your own family, you start seeking validation somewhere else. You start yearning for someone, anybody who will look you in the eye and tell you that you are enough. And this yearning for connection, for emotional intimacy, for being desired, would ultimately take her down a road that blew up into public shame, the notorious catfishing scandal. Meri's IVF struggles were not just about medical treatments. They were about emotions, identity, and belonging. Each failed attempt wasn't just a negative pregnancy test. It was another crack in her heart, another distance between her and Kody, another wall between her and her sister wives. Her jealousy was not human. Her guilt was overwhelming, and her increasing isolation paved the way for decisions that would go on to shake the Brown family to its foundation. The emotional toll of infertility didn't simply hurt Meri. It altered the course of her marriage, her religion, and her position in the family forever. There is a point in every fight when the warrior has to choose: keep fighting against the impossible, or yield to the reality presented before them. For Meri Brown, that point was not reached with one doctor's visit, or one discussion, but incrementally, drawn out over years of dashed hopes, quiet tears, and unspoken anxieties. The reality crept in like a shadow she could no longer avoid. She may never have another baby. For most women, infertility is a painful personal wound. But for Meri, it was more than that. She wasn't simply a woman. She wasn't simply a wife. She was a wife in a polygamous household, a society that honors motherhood as its peak accomplishment. A society where a wife is valued by the number she has in her household, how many children she has bearing the mark she leaves on the world. So for Meri, this wasn't just about her body betraying her. It was about her identity shattering. She wondered in hushed moments of self-doubt, if I can't produce more babies for Kody, then what am I to him? What am I to this family? This question would plague her for decades. Fans of Sister Wives saw Meri's sorrow in unfiltered raw moments. In emotional interviews she told of missing another baby, her voice breaking as tears ran down her face. She acknowledged jealousy and bitterness, feelings she did not want, but could not avoid. And, over and over again she referred to the pain in her heart, the emptiness of her home, the dream slipping further away with each passing year. It was rare vulnerability for reality television. And yet, it was those moments that connected Meri most deeply to viewers. Because infertility isn't glamorous, it isn't dramatic in the flashy sense. It's quiet, it's hidden, it's painful in ways words barely capture. Meri's breakdowns on camera weren't just entertainment. They were glimpses into a soul grappling with loss that never truly ends. Maybe the most hyped moment was when fourth wife Robyn Brown volunteered to be a surrogate for Meri. It was presented as this amazing thing, an act of sisterhood, a means for Meri to receive the child she had always wanted. Fans assumed that Meri would jump at the opportunity. She didn't. Meri hesitated. Why? Because surrogacy, though promising, was complicated. For Meri, it brought painful questions. Will carrying a baby for Robyn mend her heart, or tear it open further? Will the child feel like hers, or an ever-present reminder of what she couldn't do? Can she welcome this gift without resentment growing toward Robyn? In her heart, Meri wasn't certain, and so, though offered, she never acted. To some of the fans this appeared to be fear or hesitation. But for Meri, it was self-preservation. Going with Robyn's suggestion may not have healed her. It may have killed her. There was also another option that went around, which was adoption. But Meri never considered that either serious. For many women, adoption brings joy. But for Meri, the wound wasn't simply about raising children. It was about the deep longing to carry a child again, to feel life inside her, to experience birth, to complete the dream she started with Leon. Adoption might have brought another child into her home, but it would not have filled the void in her heart. And so, Meri's home remained quiet. Over time, Meri's fight gave way to something quieter: acceptance. Not the joyful, peaceful kind of acceptance that comes with closure, but the heavy, reluctant kind that comes when a dream dies slowly in your arms. She stopped pursuing treatments. She stopped hoping for miracles. She stopped talking about next time. Rather, she took the reality with her as a shadow. She channeled all her energy into Leon, her sole child. She put in work, business deals, and subsequently her bed and breakfast. She attempted to seek meaning outside motherhood. Acceptance, however, had a price tag. Without children to raise as a family, Meri and Kody's connection grew weaker. In a polygamous marriage, common children can be glue, reasons to be around each other, reasons to bond, reasons to share moments. Without that, Meri and Kody were left with less and less to keep them together. Kody, who never did beat around the bush, freely admitted in subsequent seasons he no longer experienced romantic love for Meri. He viewed her as a friend, or even an obligation, but certainly not as a wife in the manner in which he viewed his other wives. For Meri, listening to those words was heartbreaking. She had sacrificed her youth, her commitment, her loyalty to this marriage, only to be informed that she was no longer loved the way she desired. Their relationship degenerated into something remote, something empty, friendship at best, alienation at worst. The question that remains is this: did Meri ever really come to terms with her infertility, or did she hide her anger beneath layers of silence? She described finding peace, letting go, on camera. Her tears contradicted her. Her coldness toward Kody contradicted her. The fissures in their marriage contradicted her. Perhaps she accepted what was beyond her control. Or perhaps acceptance was just a facade, obscuring the resentment she didn't wish to confront. Because how do you ever truly accept the loss of a dream you've nurtured for so long? This acceptance, or subdued resentment, had ripple effects. It further distanced Meri from the family. As the other wives commiserated on motherhood, she edged away. Distant made her more susceptible to loneliness, which subsequently led to her emotional involvement in the catfishing scandal. Infertility wasn't the only cause of Meri and Kody's marriage breakup, but it was one of the first, deepest wounds. Meri's breaking point wasn't one loud moment. It was 1,000 small heartbreaks that added up to a truth she could no longer deny. She would never have another child. Her acceptance was not peace, it was survival. But survival was expensive. The gradual breakdown of her marriage, the absence of romantic love from Kody, and the change of her status in the Brown family from foundation to outsider. In the end, Meri's fertility struggle wasn't just a personal heartbreak. It was the wedge that redefined her marriage, reshaped her place in the family, and left her with a painful choice: live with acceptance or live with resentment. And the truth, she carried both. When fans reflect on the decades-long saga of the Brown family, replete with love, betrayal, breakups, and courtroom-esque drama, one plotline tends to stand out above the fray: Meri Brown's journey with fertility. It is among the most agonizing and defining health struggles in the entire history of sister wives. But when you take a closer look, you realize that it is not just a tale of loss. It is a tale of resilience, of transformation, and of a woman who had to recreate her identity after the denial of her greatest aspiration. Meri might not have had additional biological children, but her impact as a mother remains profound. Her sole child, Leon Brown, became a focal point of her fortitude. Through the years, Leon's own path of self-discovery and identity was walked by themselves, coming out as transgender and creating their own way of being authentic. For some parents, this path is daunting, but Meri was with Leon in unconditional love. Fans generally say that although Meri was not able to bring more children to life, she brought life in a different sense by bringing out Leon's courage, supporting their decisions, and depicting what real parental love is all about. That was not the legacy she envisioned in 1995 when she first clasped Leon in her arms, but it turned out to be the one she accepted. Another part of Meri's strength came from her ability to build independence outside of Kody. As her marriage faltered, Meri invested her energy into her bed and breakfast in Parowan, Utah. Lizzie's Heritage Inn, a historic family property she poured her heart into. To Meri, the bed and breakfast was not just a business, it was a symbol. A statement that her identity was more than Kody's wife or one mother. She was free to be her own woman, her own provider, her own dreamer. Fans looked up to her for this. Where the rest of Kody's wives tended to be bound by his approval or money, Meri broke the mold. She proved even in heartache there is space for renewal. Of course, it doesn't take away scars. Her IVF failures created deep emotional scars that never fully closed. The yearning for a second child never went away. It just grew quiet, hidden beneath blankets of acceptance. Each time a new grandchild was born into the family of Browns, Meri was reminded of what she had lost. Each time she watched Kody rejoice with another wife's kids, she felt the distance. And even when she talked about moving on, her eyes usually gave her away. The fans saw the sadness that never seemed to leave her face, the tone of her voice that contained an ache behind the words. For Meri, infertility was not a closed chapter. It was a wound she learned to live with. Part of what makes Meri's story so powerful is how deeply it resonated with viewers. Infertility is often called a silent struggle. Millions of women experience it, but few talk about it openly. Shame, guilt, and cultural expectations keep it hidden. Meri, though, experienced it live. She wept before millions. She confessed jealousy, guilt, and heartbreak. She revealed the raw humanity behind the struggle. For women who had traveled the same journey, Meri was a reflection, confirmation that their pain was real, that they weren't alone. To others, she was a teacher, opening a window into a fight many don't grasp until they experience. Her vulnerability became her strength, and in that strength, she touched countless lives. Meri's story also challenged the cultural dynamics of plural marriage. In a family that prized large households, she became living proof that worth cannot only be measured in children. Her inability to have more children forced conversation within the family and among fans about identity, value, and what makes a wife important. By existing in that space, by refusing to disappear, Meri reshaped the narrative. She was more than her womb, more than her role as a mother. She was a woman with her own identity, her own path. And that message was radical in a world where women in polygamy are often defined almost entirely by their motherhood. Meri's greatest strength may not have been triumph, but survival. She endured the devastating heartbreak of unsuccessful IVF. She endured the gradual disintegration of her marriage to Kody. She endured the psychological aftermath of being beside in her own household. And still she didn't just endure. She grew. She learned to live, to thrive in new ways. She started businesses, helped care for Leon, and learned to be independent. Her story shows that resilience isn't about erasing pain. It's about carrying it with dignity and refusing to let it define your entire life. In the end, Meri's legacy is not one of failure but of courage. Her health issue wasn't just medical. It was emotional, cultural, and deeply personal. It changed her marriage, reshaped her role in the Brown family, and left fans heartbroken, but it also made her dig deeper, to find strengths she might not have realized she possessed. Meri's story is a reminder of one hard-won truth. Sometimes the greatest battles in life are the ones we're fighting quietly inside ourselves. And Meri Brown fought that battle every day.